Hello, everyone. Welcome to COEX Talk. Today we have Evan Oskierko-Jeznacki, who will talk a little bit about what off the grid means, and he will share some experiences that has gone through. So, Evan, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about who you are, why do you do what you do, and how you got involved in this off the grid living?
Sure. So first off, you nailed it, the pronunciation. So all that preparation really worked.
I actually love your last name.
Thank you. I do too, except nobody can pronounce it, and I get stopped at airports and stuff. So
Okay.
anyway, do you want me to go into like my professional
Yeah.
background?
Well, yeah, do professional background. Like,
Okay. So I'm an architect by training. My background's in architecture. Um, I went to the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, specialized in history theory and fabrication. I worked in a firm in Chicago for several years, small firm doing residential commercial work. And we ended up doing a lot of historic projects. I ended up going to grad school, and I went to Penn,
mm, that's
and
where we met.
that's where we met. I did two master's degrees. One was a Master of Science in Historic Preservation, and the other was Master of Environmental Building Design degree, which is what you did.
Yeah.
And while I was there, did a lot of work, graduate research and stuff like that. Graduated, worked at Penn for a year as a researcher full time, and then they asked me to stay and do my PhD, which is
Mhm.
technically what I'm still finishing right now.
What are
Um,
you doing your PhD on? Tell us a little bit about
uh, it's basically kind of a culminating all the work that I've done in the last 5 or 6 years at Penn through the different projects and centers. And they all sort of revolve around this theme of how do you, as somebody who's trained as an architect or, who has maybe even still a little bit further knowledge in sustainable design, environmental design. It's a process of how do you approach um, existing complex problems,
that. Mhm.
I don't want to say existing structures necessarily, historic structures, but all the projects that I've worked on, all the way, from Adobe ruins in
Yeah.
northeastern New Mexico, all the way to Mongolian yurts, in the high plains of Mongolia. Um, I found that I use the same process to approach each of these really complex and unique problems as a way to, first identify their system behavior, identify the deterioration mechanisms, and then come up with a methodology for modeling those systems to better understand them. And then, and then it branches, whether it's conservation, preservation, or a better understanding of the thermal behavior of certain properties or whatever. So it's a sort of methodology that I, kind of, I don't want to say haphazardly, but through trial and error and all these projects over many years sort of
Mhm.
came to, and that's basically what I'm writing it on. Um, it's something I've been calling it forensic modeling, which is this process of sort of like modeling to better understand, not
Yeah.
necessarily modeling to produce a product. Um, and um, and modeling there is in a very broad sense. So anyway, I worked. I'm doing my PhD, and then I've been working at the Center for Environmental Building Design with William Bram,
Mhm.
who runs the MEBD program, and then I would split my time between there and the Center for Architectural Conservation, which is run by Frank Montero, which is a sort of preservation wing at Penn Design.
Okay,
And
I'm gonna stop you a little bit.
yep,
Can I ask you this question?
yes.
What is conservation? A lot of people don't know. Now I know because I've been working on conservation, but
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, it can be hyper broad or it can be
yeah.
hyper specific depending on what you're, who you're talking to and what the work is, and also where you are on the planet. In North America, conservation deals kind of very specifically with um, sort of the the material fabric of a particular object or building or landscape or whatever, and try to better understand that fabric and try to um, basically prolong its longevity through various means, whether that's highly invasive intervention with structural reinforcement or Dutchman's and things like that, or it's just, preventative conservation, which has a lot to do with modifying the system slightly so that it just lasts a little bit longer, although it is still deteriorating.
Mm-hmm.
It's not trying to arrest decay entirely, which is very different than preservation, which is a little more broad. It has a lot of it, more to do with, values and significance and integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a sort of the framework behind which a lot of the decisions go into the material interventions, which may involve conservation directly. Yeah.
Okay. So, um, just because we know each other, can you tell us a little bit more about your work in the National Park Service?
Yeah. So, right. So, like I said, I worked in those two centers for, years, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years, on and off, full-time, part-time. On the preservation side and the CAC side, most of our projects were National Park Service projects.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually a mix between NPS, projects and also some private projects. Like, for example, we're doing Taliesin East and Taliesin West to various capacities. I just came back from Taliesin East, actually, in Wisconsin, which is a private project. It's a private foundation.
What is,
and then
sorry,
yep.
what are they doing on Taliesin West?
Taliesin West is a lot of stuff, but the thing that I'm working on is his office space of the compound. It has, I don't know how much you know about it, but the roofing system
there. Oh, sorry.
No, so they had this. He had this like canvas roofing, panel system, which didn't work. I mean, everything he did was very experimental. It was very trial and error. There were no drawings. There were no, it was just sort of like, hey boys, let's go and build. Let's go fix that thing or add this thing or change this. So it wasn't working very well. I should say it wasn't working very well when they wanted to turn it into a functional studio space, teaching space, when it actually, became, when the Taliesin school formally moved in. And then when they opened it up to tours, it had to be air conditioned and all this kind of stuff. So they ended up sealing, they put like an acrylic box system over those panels.
Okay.
And that acrylic system doesn't work and it's leaked. So then they put in like an interior gutter system to catch the water that was leaking from the failing other system. It was just this big mess. And they're going to rebuild the roof. And I'm working with Gunny Harbo and Michael Henry on that.
Oh, it's because I did HABs there at Taliesin West.
Yeah,
which did the cabaret,
using a lot of those drawings.
Did, I think, that one.
Yep. And we had a thesis student, Monica, I don't remember her last name, but she did a thesis last year where she took those HABs drawings and built a SketchUp model, like a really detailed kind of almost BIM-like SketchUp model. There's a lot of plugins that you can use for SketchUp that allow you to embed data into SketchUp components and also allow you to pull that data out into spreadsheets. So they're using it. We provided that to Taliesin as a way to, because HABs drawings they're not like, let's say, functional drawings. They're documentation drawings. They're not really. You can't really take HABs drawings and then go and build something from them. It's purely documentary. So for an active site like Taliesin West, they need they need something real to use on a day-to-day basis. Where are all the fire extinguishers? How many light bulbs are there in the building? How is this built-up beam actually put together? That kind of stuff. So she took that on. Anyway, so they're working on a system for a new roofing system that's close to the original but high performance. And I'm going to do all the CFD and energy modeling to show which versions work better than others. So we're going to put a weather station out there and sensors and moisture monitors and all that kind of stuff. But getting back to your original question, so I work with Frank Quintero very closely, who runs the CAC. A lot of those NPS projects, mostly in the Southwest, American Southwest. And in January of 2019, long story short, I basically was like, I got to get out of Philadelphia, where I had been for 6 years, and kind of rapidly. And Frank was like, keys are on the porch. And I had been there the previous summer for like 3 days. We stopped there on the way down. We flew into Durango, which is where I'm at now. And We stayed at the ranch for like 3 days, and then we took off down to, I think, Tumacacre, which is not Tumacacre, Fort Union in New Mexico. And so I kind of had an idea of what it was like and all that kind of stuff. But never did I ever even think I was going to go back, let alone live there for as long as I did. So anyway, he said, yeah, keys are on the porch. And I think it was like February 8th was the day that I bought a ticket, and one-way ticket. And John, who also works in the CSE, John Hinchman, he had been there, much longer than I had, and he kind of understood it, and he came out with me, bless his heart, and he showed me how to, all the stuff I needed to know, what to do, what not to do, more or less. It kind of gave me a crash course for like a week, and then he took off. And this is in the middle of February, mind you. And it's, I'm wondering if these pictures loaded. Let me see. Oh, not so many. Let's see which ones I have. Anyway, so what I can do is I'm going to pull it up on Google Earth and give you guys kind of an idea of what it is and stuff. Share screen, Google Earth. So it's in Southwest Colorado, right in the Four Corners area. It's in a town called Mancos. And how do I zoom out here? I want to rotate. So okay, so this is Mancos. Can you guys see the cursor? All right, so that's Mancos right there. For people who are sort of familiar, yeah, Mancos is, wait a minute, is that right? Nope, sorry, this is Mancos, even further up. It's a town of like, I don't know, probably less than 1,000 people, or maybe a little bit over now. Yeah. It's 27 miles west of Durango, which is the big town, the quote unquote big town where the big airport is, which is where I'm at now. Durango is here, and I am like here right now. Okay. And the other big town is Cortez to the west. And for those of you who know about Mesa Verde is, it's basically, this is this big mesa right here. This is all Mesa Verde. Mm-hmm. And the back of it is, I can see Mesa Verde from my porch. This is the sort of back. And actually, historically, the original access to Mesa Verde National Park used to be through this canyon. So I live in Weber Canyon, which is this canyon here. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like 11 or 13 miles from town, down this road, dirt road, this one here. And, oh man, let's see if these pictures work. Can you guys see this? Oh wait, no, I need to share the wrong screen. Let's see. Stop share screen. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know which pictures are going to show up in which order, but
Fine.
This is the road. This is the nice part of the road. This is like the residential part of the road, where there's a bunch of dogs that would follow me in and stuff. And this is in February. So
is it like wild dogs?
No, I mean they belong to somebody.
Okay.
Okay. Like this one guy's got like 30 dogs, and they don't even have names and stuff.
Yeah.
These are totally in the wrong order. That's also on the property. That was there when
Now I want to see it.
So that was there when I got there, and actually, my girlfriend now, she took that skull and she painted it really cool, which I have. It's hanging.
Is it like a bird or what is it?
No, yeah, what is it? That's it's a deer. It's got to be a deer.
That's a deer?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
I'm not actually sure. I think it might.
That's a deer.
It's pretty big. It's not because she's got too many teeth. I don't really know what it is. It can't be an elk. It's not feline of any kind. And the only other thing we get down there are deer.
I forgot the name in English.
It could be a coyote, but it's kind of big for a coyote. I mean,
which one? Oh, an ostrich?
Yeah.
No, definitely not. Like I said, there aren't very many. We get turkeys, we get bobcats.
Maybe it's a big turkey.
Yeah, turkeys, bobcats. Supposedly in the past, mountain lions. I haven't seen any bears. deer, occasionally elk, but not by me, further up the road, and foxes, and stuff like that. So of those options, the closest thing I thought was a deer, but it's got the wrong teeth. Anyway, this is the canyon looking north. You can sort of see, that's my one neighbor who lives in a yurt.
Cool.
And this is my other neighbor who built this big compound looking thing. Okay, these are like in some totally weird order. That's my kind of dining room. It's in an addition that's built off. That's part of the solar system. I need to go through all these to figure out which one's loaded, and then I'll go back and put them in an order. That's part of the solar shed. These are scratch marks from a bear a couple weeks ago.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
This is the creek that's totally overflowed because of the beaver dams, which I do have some pictures of. This is a scour pond I built to try to dig out the pond inlet that got buried, which I can talk about. This is part of the cabin. This is a picture I took to do measurements, so it's kind of, that's why
I love the cabin.
This is the
so
west
pretty.
elevation. That's the pantry there. This is the original cabin. That's an addition that was built, and that's the porch. Side. What is this? Oh, this is a funny video we took. This is how we cut the grass. We don't have like tractors. We just have this old truck. It's the only thing that works. And we have this big, and it has the wrong hookup to the thing on the truck. We had to like make this whole thing to make it work. And it just like, that's all we had, So
yeah.
We don't have bobcats or, tractors or, we have an old truck. That's all we had. So this is what it looks like off the front porch in the winter. Looking south.
Beautiful.
That's the bathroom.
Oh, you have one of those bathrooms.
Yeah, and that's it's a piece of insulation for the winter because it gets really cold, and your butt will literally freeze to the thing. So we cut those out of just rigid insulation.
That's funny.
Is that all of them? Really? I don't know why this is taking so long to upload. This is like ridiculous, but hopefully some more will load.
So in your own words, what is off the grid?
Well, I mean, technically, literally, it means you're not connected to any grid: plumbing, electrical, social, those kinds of things. And that definition, this place, where I live, is completely off the grid. We have a leach field and a septic tank. We have a well system for water. We have I want this to zoom in. We have a solar system for all the electrical. And literally the only thing that comes in and out is food comes in and trash goes out. And that's it. Actually, that's why I was coming into town today. I had to drop off trash and recyclables. I usually collect like a truck full of recyclables, and then I bring them into Durango where there's a big recycling center. And
how often do you take your trash?
Trash usually, like if I'm just there by myself, I'll have like a Walmart bag a week of garbage. We had, Frank, the guy who owns the ranch, he came down and he had a bunch of visitors and John was there. So at one point there was probably like 5 or 6 people. And so they left a lot of stuff. And so I'm still dumping that stuff in sort of waves. So I'm dumping all the recyclables, cans and bottles and stuff. And I got probably 2 or 3, garbage bags that are like head high, huge bags.
So
anyway,
how do you get your food?
Yeah. So, I mean, so that part, where I actually live, you're not allowed to hunt or anything. You're not even allowed to have firearms, but, so I'm not that off the grid. I totally 100% would be
See, that's
if
why
I was allowed to.
You, what is to you off the grid?
And if I could, I would. It's just that it's kind of complicated, but it's kind of like it's the covenants. There's 9 units, and of those units in that covenants in the canyon, there's certain rules. You're not allowed to hunt. You're not allowed to have firearms. You're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z. But you know, there are days where there'll be turkey who come right up to the porch, and I'm sitting there like scratching my head, you know, thinking, like, will anybody know, you know, if I take one of these turkeys? They're hyper aggressive too. Like, don't think of like, oh, they're so cute. Like they've like charged me before and stuff, and so a couple of times I'm like, that's it, you know, I'm gonna eat this turkey. But no, so I buy my groceries in town, and the town in Mancos, and they
Do you?
all their stuff comes from all the farmers, you know, locally. So
That's
literally on the way into town, I pass all the farms, and all their stuff is sold at it's called the P&D, and so that's where I get, you know, produce, and all the meat comes from a couple of ranches that are pretty close, and that's pretty much
So
it. I don't buy a lot of, you know.
this is gonna be a weird question. So what's exactly your trash if you're buying local?
The trash is, I mean, for like, it depends. You know, for example, in the colder months, we have, you know, basically let's just say whenever the bears are hibernating, we have a compost pile.
Uh-huh.
And then when the bears are not hibernating, we take the compost pile out because bears will dig through that. It's one of their favorite things to do. So, and that's, you know, when everyone came back this year, they started throwing stuff into the compost pile without thinking. And sure enough, you know, I had 3 bears walk up, you know, 10 feet away from me, digging through the thing on my way to the bathroom. And I'm like, oh man, you know, but, so it depends on the season, but normally, the only stuff I bring out are things that, like in the winter, it's things that I can't burn. So like I burn all the boxes and paper and wrapping. I burn most of my like food scraps, you know, like fat trimmings off steak or, you know, stuff like that. I just throw it into the fire. And I wish this thing would load. I have a picture of the kitchen, because there's a wood burning stove. We have a gas stove, a big gas stove, and we also have a wood burning stove. And in the winter, I almost never use the gas stove because it's really inefficient, and I just use the big cast iron. It's like a 4-burner cast iron wood burning stove with an oven. And, you know, I go chop my wood. You know, I got to go get a wood permit, and then I go up. There's a spot up on Mancos Hill between here and Durango where I go up, and I bring the chainsaws, and you get a permit, and, you know, you can cut down, I think, 1 or 2 cords of wood, and I load the truck up, which I also have a picture of, but I can't find. And then, yeah. And so whatever in the winter and when it's cold, and it's cold pretty quick here, and it stays cold. Like, you know, the last frost day we had this year was like in June.
Wow.
I think it was in June, and it got
Oh,
cold.
wow.
And I remember because I had to go find wood. I didn't have any wood. And I was down at the ranch, and I had burned through all my winter wood. I just like, well, I'm not going to get any more because I don't need it. And it got down to like 20 something. And I was like burning, you know, like whatever I like, notebooks or like whatever I had, and like wood scraps and stuff like that. So, you know, in that sense, in the winter, I have very little trash. I just have like plastic, you know, the recyclables, plastics, glass, stuff like that. That's why it's pretty small, and that kind of thing.
What about water?
Yeah, so water, you know, so we have a well, which I don't know where some of these would load. Oh, that's another picture. That's on the way down.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Where the cows just sort of, I know there's a video. There's a video of me coming back at night,
and they'll do your grass.
That's true, actually, and they do that, mainly because you don't have a choice. Colorado is what they call a free range state. So if you don't want, like, if you're a farmer with cows and I'm your neighbor and I don't want your cows on my property, I have to build a fence. You don't have to build a fence to keep your cows in. So like you'll find just cows like this everywhere. And I guess 2 years ago, the big ranch up the road, a bunch of the cows got out, and they actually went all the way down to the Ute land, the reservation land, to the south of me. And they went through the ranch, and they, you know, went to the bathroom everywhere. And I think it was like 200 pounds of dried, you know, cow dung that I had to put in a wheelbarrow and, you know, throw out. That was a lot of work. And they trampled a bunch of stuff and broke a bunch of fences. And there's a video of me coming in at night, and there was like probably 50 cows in the road, and I had to, like, with my Jeep, like, herd them down the road. There's a spot where they can go back in.
Oh, that's so cool.
I know. I want a cow so bad.
So we're gonna have cows in our farm.
Yeah. This
Yes,
is what the
we
place
are.
looks like in the winter. Whatever. That's the Jeep. That's the
Beautiful.
driveway right here. That's the pond when it's full. The pond is 100% dry, and there's a whole problem with that, which I can explain if you want.
Yes.
Just trying to see if any more of these pictures loaded. Oh, that's the bedroom.
Oh, that's such a cute bedroom.
This is the trash shed,
That's what I
and this
see
is
it.
actually the historic homestead. One of the historic homesteads is a guy who lived in this thing way back when, and now we use it as a trash shed. But it's very small. It's probably 10 by 10. And so at some point, somebody had come in while I was back at Penn teaching with Bill and left a bunch of trash in here, and the bear ripped through that, and I had to rebuild. I had to rebuild the door and everything. Okay, I don't think any new ones loaded. Oh, that's my office.
Oh, I love your office.
That's where I have all
You
my
have a lot
stuff.
of books.
That's my guitar. That's my laptop. That's my
Are those all
lunch.
your books?
They're Frank. I mean, somebody donated all of them to Frank, and Frank just put them down there. A lot of them are his, though. This is like just a lunch day. That's the front porch. Okay, that's all of them, I think. Yep, another lunch day. All right, so the well, I was hoping a picture of the well showed up, and it did not. So the well is, let me zoom in. So there's a creek that runs down through here. It's called Weber Creek. It's pretty, pretty small, pretty low volume. Trying to get this to be straight down. Okay, so this is the road, right, that comes in. This is the driveway. That's the house that we were looking at. The solar shed where the solar panels and the batteries are here. The trash shed, which we were looking at, is right here. This is we call this the teaching barn, is where we keep the vehicles and the tools and all kinds of stuff, where we have workspaces for students and stuff to work. This is a historic, we called it the loafing shed. It's a historic loafing barn, historic barn that we keep some stuff in, and you can kind of see the old outline of the old corral fence there. That's the pond. And then since Frank bought the place, I think in the early 2000s, he's built, John has built these cabins. So we have 5 cabins. They're 10 by 10 cabins that sleep two each. This is the shower house, and this is what we call the TA cabin, which is a bigger cabin for like the TAs. So it's nicer. It's like a double cabin. That's like 10 by 20 or 12 by 20 or so. All right, so that's the road back there. Here's the main road. The creek kind of meanders. It's kind of hard to see in here, but the creek is in here, where all the cottonwoods are. And right here, this very distinctive line is Frank's property boundary. So we're on 90 acres. It's 2 lots, 45 acres each, and it's kind of hard to tell, but we actually just flew the drone. I had some really good drone footage of this, which I could have showed. But anyway, these are the canyon walls, where all these trees are, and so it gets very steep very fast. So a lot of his land is actually up the canyon walls. But in any case, the well is, let's see, pond is here. Here's this. The well is like here somewhere. And there was a big fire in 2006 or something like that, or no, 2012, and it burned all the way down the canyon on the east side of the canyon, and then the next year they had a really bad flood, and it flooded the whole canyon, and it buried that wellhead. So last year I spent like a month and a half looking for that wellhead with metal detectors and utility line detectors and all kinds of stuff, because it wasn't working. So I finally found it and pulled it out. The whole process for pulling the wellhead out, because it's down like 85 feet. So you got to pull the whole thing out, and had a guy fix that. So we had running water. So the water pulls, right from in there. And so that's where I get the water. Like I said, the creek runs, and then up here where this red line is, there is an inlet for the pond. So we're allowed to tap off from that pond so much every, every season or something. And there was another flood, and there's a riser that sticks up into the, from the pipe into the water. And we would just take the riser off, and the water would go into it, and it would flow down a pipe that goes kind of in a straight line, and it would fill the pond. But flood knocked the riser off, it buried it, and we have no idea where it is. So a couple of weeks ago, I had to go get an excavator and a big truck and brought it down, and we spent 3 days digging. And we dug a hole. First, we dug a hole by hand, which took 3 days. And then we said, nah, we're done. So we got an excavator. We dug a hole 150 feet long. That's the red line, 70 feet deep, and we still couldn't find it, which means it's deeper than 7 feet, which means we need a bigger excavator, which means we got to do it next season. Anyway, so the pond is totally dry, which is a real shame. But the way it works is there's an inlet from the creek. It fills the pond, and then there's an overflow by this big tree that fills an acequia that runs behind the house into a little pond thing here, and then it runs back into the creek over here. And that cools. What's up?
Is there a filter somewhere in this?
Nope. I mean, we don't drink that water. That's just for, the acequia cools everything down, and it keeps the property really cool and stuff during the summer, and all that kind of stuff. And also, like this water is downstream. The creek water is downstream from like 3 ranches. So, you generally don't want to drink that water or put it anywhere near your mouth or eyes or anything like that, which is a real shame because there are some huge, delicious looking crawfish in that creek, and we have crawfish traps, but it's tempting.
And where do you get your drinking water from?
Yeah, that was going to be
drinking water comes from the well.
Okay.
So the well, the well water is coming from the aquifer, and it's coming from the groundwater.
Yeah. Okay.
So you have really good water.
Yeah. Well, I should say it's good, but it's very hard. Has a lot of magnesium, and in fact, when you're in the canyon and you look up at the canyon walls, you can even see the magnesium shining, on the canyon walls. It just it's everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And so it's very well filtered because of the shale. There's a lot of shale. It's called Manka shale. Really high quality clay and shale and stuff, but still a lot of that magnesium and a lot of the hardness comes through it. It screws up the water system. It screws up the water tank. It screws up the pressure tank. I mean, everything. And if you drink it without filtering it, and if you're not used to it, it's sort of like drinking milk of magnesia kind of thing. So that has a kind of rapid effect on certain people.
Like in their stomach?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know what milk of magnesia is, right? It's like if you got stomach problems and it kind of accelerates things. Yeah. It's exactly what it is. So some people react very badly to it. I don't. But there used to be, I had a picture of it. Of course, it's not going to load, but there's a water softener system, really expensive one that they said, oh, it's not going to affect it. And it totally just ruined it over the course of like 10 years. And so whatever you put in there, it's just, I have to accept that like shortly it'll just get caked up with calcium and magnesium and all the minerals. And stuff like that. So that's where the water comes from. And it's very good water. It's very clean water.
I mean, I think it's better than the one we actually drink here in the city. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just different chemicals. Like there's synthetic chemicals, the ones in the city, and I get, like iron. Like sometimes the water comes out and it's, it's orange because there's just so much iron in it. Which, looks gross, but it's, huh?
Do you have a filter in the house somewhere?
I did have one of those, Brita water things, but like 1 week and it's dead. They can't do it.
Yeah.
It just
so if you do have to filter your water, how do you do that? Like, or do you literally just drink it like that?
I just drink it. It's not worth
Even
it.
Even if it's orange?
Yeah, it's got iron in it. Whatever. It's not a big deal. I mean, again, I guess I have a pretty strong stomach. It doesn't really affect me.
Now I want to try and see the effects on me.
Yeah, but
I don't think it's a good idea.
Some people like it just. I mean, things you got to worry about is there's a whole. You can actually look it up. There's a whole like chart thing, and it's about the color it's the color, the clarity, and at what speed, right? So like if the water's coming out, like if you open the faucet and the water's coming out really fast and it's still cloudy and it's still yellow, that means one thing versus something where you pour a glass and you let it sit after 20 minutes, is it still yellow? It has to do with like turbidity and all this stuff that I don't really understand. The only things that I know is I know what to look for. If, you know, there are certain, you know, one of the reasons why a well cap has to rise up out of the ground, usually it's 24 inches, depending on what state you're in, is that when a well head gets covered in a flood or whatever, stuff can get down into it, and you can contaminate not only your well, but you can contaminate the groundwater for everybody in that area. And so a lot of times, like during, you know, after floods and stuff like that, you can get, you know, dead animals, biogrowth, bacteria and stuff like that. And those have very distinct indicators, like, you know, right away, like when you taste it and you smell it. And then you basically shock it. You throw some, you know, bleach tablets down in the well or whatever, and you clean
What
it
about
up.
rainwater? Does it rain there a
It
lot?
does, but like if I was relying on rainwater, I would have died a week ago. Like we haven't had rain. We had a couple very heavy rains a couple weeks ago.
What if you collected snow and then melt it and then store it somewhere?
Right. So actually in the winter, that's where I get all my water from, because I really don't want to turn the water system on in the winter because it'll freeze the line. So basically the way it works is in the winter, because it's a well and it's coming, you know, from 85 feet deep and then it's going 4 feet under to your house. Unless that water is constantly running in those pipes, it'll freeze. And having the water constantly running is also not a great thing either. And so usually in the winter, like let me just put it this way. I didn't get the well running until the end of summer last year. And even when it was running, I never used it. So I almost never used water. I would bring in, in town, there's like a free for the farmers and stuff. You can go fill up water, and I would bring 2 big 5-gallon jugs a week, 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. So I would go through 5 gallons a week. And in the winter, I didn't even need it because that road that you see here, it is so bad in the winter that you really, like, there are times you just can't get out. So like there was a couple of times last winter I was down there for like 3 weeks and I couldn't get out because there was so much mud. And it's really dangerous because you just slide off of it. And I was using the winch, you know, like crazy. I had to keep winching myself out of
But then what do
ditches.
you eat? What if you run out of food?
You get, you know, beans and rice and stock up on bacon and eggs. And, you know, like I would basically shop for the month. Like I would go in assuming I would get stuck down there, and, you know, like big stack of tortillas, you know, a bunch of cans of beans, you know, carrots and like stuff that keeps pretty well and whatever. And because also, you know, so besides the water, I would just literally go out every morning. I had 2 huge, you know, like chefs, you know, like massive pots, you know, like they're like 2 feet deep and like 20 inches around. And I would just pack them full of snow. And then I'd leave them after I would do the fire at night. The way I did it was like, you know, I shoved the stove full of wood, let it burn. And then when I had a big bed of coals, I would open the oven so that the heat from the oven would come out. I would put all the cast iron stuff, all the metal stuff I had, I would throw in the oven. And then right before I go to bed, I would open the oven doors and then let the heat come out and let the coals kind of keep it hot. And at night I would pack these 2 big things of snow and I'd throw them on top of that stove. And in the morning I'd probably have 10 gallons of water, and, you know, freshest, cleanest, most delicious water you could think of. And that's what I would bathe with. That's what I would drink with. That's what I would cook with, wash with, clean with, all that stuff. And
so what about electricity? So everything runs out of solar?
Yep. So we have a 12 deep cell marine battery system. I don't know what the number capacity is, but it, you know, it does pretty well. It's probably from the early 2000s, so it's kind of on its last legs, sort of. And in the winter, it's a struggle because the sun is so low, and because we got the canyon walls. So the canyon walls take off about, I would say, like an hour to an hour and a half of sun. not daylight, but direct sun. So like in the winter, I probably only get like, I would say 6 hours of direct sun on those panels.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be really careful of what I put in the fridge. A lot of times I would just put stuff in pots, pack it with snow, and leave it outside. And that was a lot better than keeping the fridge on, because the fridge is really old and it kills it. There have been times I've been out there and the fridge will just kill the batteries. In the middle of the night, I'll be doing dishes and then it's pitch black. And let me tell you, it is so dark down there. Like, you have not experienced darkness. Like, you can't even see your hand like in front of your face. So that's pretty terrifying, but you get used to it. And
how long did it take to get used to that?
It took me probably like 3 weeks. And actually, the thing that was the hardest to get used to was the sound, because it's so quiet. There's no white noise. There's no, no traffic, no planes. I found out that there are only 2 flights that fly over this area, and I know exactly where they're coming from, and I know where they're going at more or less what days and times and stuff, because there's so few. And but it's so quiet that I could not fall asleep because of the creek running. I could hear the creek gurgling like 300 yards away.
But that's so relaxing.
It's not when there's no other noise. It was like the loudest thing I had ever heard, and it took me a long time to get used to that.
How long?
That was like 3 weeks, like I said. So like that, It was.
Well, you said the light was 3 weeks, but the sleeping was 3 weeks.
Oh no! Like, to just get used to that place, it took me about 3 weeks.
Okay. As an overall.
And the altitude, because even down in that canyon, it's still like 7,000 feet or 7,400 feet. So, like, I was like walking up the canyon wall to go cut wood, and I'm like, can't breathe. It's just because I was trying to get used to the altitude, trying to get used to the climate. It's so dry.
And there was no people. It was only you there, or were there?
Oh, John was there for like I think about a week.
But then you were there for a couple of months, right?
I was there through August, and then I had to go back to Philly to teach, and then I was back in March of this year, and I've been there since. And we just had a huge fire last month or 2 months ago that came within a couple miles of us right there, and they were flying planes over the house. Like, I could count the bolts on the tires. That's how low they were. And they were dropping firefighters in this field right here, because they really thought it was going to come down to the canyon. And I was down there chopping trees down, trying to get all the brush away from the house. I had to get the Jeep out and a bunch of other stuff, and that was pretty hectic. I wish I should have been more prepared. I apologize. I've got pictures of that fire, and it's gnarly. It's really one of the cool, most, awesome in the sort of like awe-inspiring sense things I had ever seen.
You can send us some of them later on. That way we can share it with our.
Yeah, I definitely. Well, I have this like this set of like 50 pictures, which I think really captures the whole thing. Oh, here we go.
Maybe you can put your phone close to your. Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Okay.
Let's stop sharing this. Can you guys see? So that's my favorite restaurant in Mancos. It's called Chivolo's, and that's on that mountain that's right next to the cabin. So that's like, it's probably like 4 or 5 miles away there, and that's kind of halfway between where the photo's taken and where I am. And like, I got a call from my neighbor. I was out fishing in Durango, and I got a call and I saw the smoke, and I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then as soon as I said, oh, that's weird, I get this phone call from my neighbor who's like 3 miles further down canyon, and he goes, man, you better get down here. And I, got the truck, got the chainsaws, got gas, case of beer, and and I was down there for like 8 hours. Well, it's better than water sometimes when you got to keep going, And it was a lot of work, to try and, and we don't have the ability to like hose everything down, and there's just not enough water to do that. So.
And it was only you, right? Like in that area, like John wasn't there.
Yeah, it was me, and like that I told you, there's the yurt, right? Mm-hmm. Those people don't really live there. That's sort of like a secondary thing. Mm-hmm. That other house that blockier looking one, that guy
Yeah.
lives there year round, and that's like
Oh, okay.
2 or 3 miles, probably 2 miles past me, and then that's it, in terms of like permanent residence. And actually, if you read the article about that fire that was in, I don't know, it was like Denver CNN or something, and it said firefighters are working around the clock to protect, because on that hill to the right where the fire was, that's where all the radio antennas are for the firefighters in the area. So they were really trying to keep it from crossing the ridge into the canyon. And it said firefighters are working around the clock trying to keep it from, going towards those antennas, and they're also worried about two whatever homesteads or properties down the canyon. I was like, hey man, that's me.
I'm famous.
I'm famous now. And but luckily the wind
I'm one
was
of
blowing
them.
north. Yeah, that's me. So the wind was blowing away, and luckily for me, not luckily for the people in Thompson Park, which is on the other side, that a couple of homes got destroyed, I think, and I think it was like 3,000 acres ultimately. I actually think there's let me see. I thought I had a fire picture. Oh, here it is. Let me share my screen again. What? Well, apparently it won't let me open that. That's a map of the fire, but technology is really not doing well. Let's see if any more of these loaded up. That's the kitchen. Okay, here we go. So that's where I do all my work mostly. That's the gas stove. This is the wood burning stove that I pretty much mostly use.
Where do you get the gas from?
There's a huge, I don't know how many gallons, but big propane pig out in the back that a guy comes down once every big now and a while and fills it up. I think in the whole time that I was down there last winter, I used 4% of that tank. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much that was. And there's a little propane natural gas furnace in the back here that I had this whole system, which was like, I would start the fire at like 6 o'clock, the wood fire, and I would burn it for 3 hours. And then I would set the thermostat to 55 degrees, and the coals in the stove would keep the house more or less warm until like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, when it would get down to freezing and water would freeze down here. And then that little stove in the back would kick on just to kind of keep it above freezing until I woke up and put the fire again.
Wow.
This is a big rock where I would sit on next to the property. That's looking south.
That's a beautiful view.
I'm so jealous.
Oh, this is the sign, at the road, on the road. That's the barn down there. So this is the water softener system. This is that pantry area, which doesn't work at all. And I just disconnected it actually and dumped it. That's the pressure tank. This is where the water from the well comes up through the floor. That you have to keep this space warm in the winter. So I keep that door to the kitchen open, and when I run the fire, I let this space fill up with hot air. And then in the morning, or at least at the end of the day, the sun comes in here and it heats up and stuff. So it works out okay. These are the recycling bins, the 3 bins. This is how much water I would get. Each one of these is 5 gallons, and that would last me a minimum of 2 weeks, sometimes longer. And you put a little bit of bleach in there just to kind of keep it sanitary or whatever.
Is that also for drinking? That's
for everything. I mean, that's like when I didn't have the well running, that was all my water. I had 10 gallons every 2 weeks, more or less, plus whatever I would get from the snow. But
see, doable. We can all live with
yep.
water.
Those are the batteries. Showed you that already. Those are bobcat prints. That's the pond. Oh, that's the new door that I fixed. If anybody cares. This is one of the big beaver dams. There's 9 now. Well, there were 9. We knocked down 7 of them, I think, and we left this one just because we had to fix. So where I'm taking the picture from is the road, the other road. and that dam was causing a lot of turbulence, and it was eating away the wall of the road here, and so we ended up flattening it with the bulldozer and then dumping the dirt back in there to try and strengthen it. And what we ended up actually doing was ripping this one out and using it as sort of like I don't know, like rebar. We would take some of those reeds and stuff, throw it in, throw some dirt, more reeds, dirt, reeds, and we packed it in and we rebuilt that creek. And that's that. What else? Oh, this is a bear print, which was a couple weeks old. Oh, there's this for scale. That's my foot, the bear's foot. It's right by the creek. They're black bears. They're not aggressive, but they are annoying.
Trying to see bear.
I did have a pic. Man, I might have a picture of one. This was the big bear. This was the big den, the beaver den. This was the huge one.
Beaver den.
It's massive, and that's John for scale. And you could tell they're bank beavers, not so they dig down into the bank, and this is all of his winter food, stores or whatever. And you could tell because there's two entrances. There's one here. They always have an entrance and an exit in case one gets blocked or flooded. He's not there anymore. But the biggest dam he built was probably 75 feet long and 4 feet tall. It was huge, and it totally reshaped the water. I mean, we had lagoons and like standing water stuff, and it built up like 4 feet of silt. It was in like one season, 4 feet of silt got backed up behind all these dams.
Oh my God.
I showed you that. No, okay. I was really hoping some of those other ones would show up, but oh, I can't show you the well though. This is the well. This is the utility line detector that we use to try and find the buried, because the well, there's a pipe with water, and then there's also a positive and a negative electrical line that runs. And so we rented this thing that can detect that, you put a current on that line and it'll detect it and tell you where it is. So that was there. There's the well. That's where and all of this around it is the silt that built up in the last probably 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
It's probably like 3 or 4 feet of silt. So we had to dig it out and expose it. And yeah, that's the well cap we were trying to get. I had to get a new piece of pipe made. That's what the well look, and that's the creek. That's how close it is to the creek. What else? Videos. I think these might be like videos of the creek running. Not sure. Oh wait, I believe that's the bear. It's a little hard to see, but
yeah, it looked like a bear.
yeah, it's
Or a cow.
Nope, that's a bear. That's him. Every spring, early spring, he would come down, or she, and she would scratch there's a bunch of trees out there, and you would hear this like kind of sound, and then you look up, and then there she was. And she's got cubs now. I guess she has 2 cubs, which are what goes through our trash. And there were, that's us cutting the there's 40 acres that we have to cut, and that's how we did it.
Why don't you just, if cows are free there, just lift one up, take
Yeah.
it?
They're not our cows, first of all, and
You'll just take it borrowed.
so unless the cows manage to make their way
Maybe
down
try
here.
to get them into
The problem with cows is
property.
once they get down this way, they don't want to go back, and so somebody has to, bring them back.
Well, then we push them back.
Yeah.
Although there's a person in town. We have a lot of invasive weeds and stuff, and if you don't, the county will come and spray, but the spray is very toxic. It gets into the water and stuff, and so almost everybody on the road has these signs that say, don't spray. But by law, if you don't spray, you have to take care of the invasives. You can get fined if you don't. So there's a couple people who have like goats, and
Yeah.
they bring in these like pens, and they put the goats in. The goats will just eat everything, and then they move the pen, 30 feet, and they eat everything, and that apparently works really well. But cows not so much.
Well, maybe John needs to get a goat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Frank's always wanted, chickens and stuff like that, but it's so much work just to have the place to be there empty, let alone with people or any kind of animals or anything. It's a lot of work. I was really hoping some of these other ones would show up. Oh, I could show you on my phone. So that's that. I mean, do you guys have more specific kind of questions?
No, I think this has been amazing. We really enjoyed the pictures. I don't know if you want to ask.
Very eye-opening.
I think it's amazing to see the reality of the off the grid, because in my mind it's just like so simple.
Oh, it's
a piece of land.
So we get a lot of rattlesnakes.
Oh yeah.
That's a bull snake. We have 2 big bull snakes, and they actually eat the rattlesnakes, which is kind of nice. But a lot of rattlesnakes. It's pretty dangerous. I'm just going through my phone at this point, trying to find stuff. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was like, oh, it'll be great. Like, how much work could it possibly be? And it's like, it was basically like a full-time job. I mean, I was, if you weren't like rebuilding roofs or rebuilding doors or like, whatever, chopping wood or keeping the mice out or figuring out ways to keep the mice out, or finding the well, getting your water running, getting the pond running, getting the, it's like, it's literally endless. And I was almost late for this call, because like, I was like, oh my God, I got so much stuff left to do. And I was like, I got to stop. I got to go. And I just like shut everything off. And, I'm trying to get the place ready for, I'm not going to be back until probably like, October or something. And so I have to basically shut it down, and I have to, there's a whole process for getting all the water out of the building and blowing. You got to hook up a compressor and blow the water out of the lines and put antifreeze in, and so the lines don't freeze, and dump all the trash and empty the fridge and shut the electrical down, and get all the vehicles ready, take the batteries out, and put Stabile in all the tanks, and it's just a never ending kind of thing. So which for me ended up being great, very therapeutic. That's why I never went back. So but for some people, like he's tried to bring students out there in the past, and it's like, well, there's no internet, there's no service, there's no water, there's no food, there's no whatever. It's like, well, those things do exist. I mean, except for the service and the internet, but
yeah,
it's not in a format or quantity that you are familiar with. So so some people do.
So that's what worries me. The food is very crucial.
Like, you
for
eat so good in this part of the country. You eat so good. I mean,
really,
the best produce. Like, I had the best carrots I've ever had in my life. There's a lady who has a farm down the road, and they're a little bit expensive, whatever, but I'm happy to support it. And but they're like the best. I've never like just eaten carrots like just nonstop. I'll just eat carrots all day long because they're like sweet and delicious. And there's a big ranch called James Ranch. It's on the way to Silverton in Durango. The best meat. I mean, just like the best beef you've ever had. Just
because everything it's a lot like fresher. Like,
it's fresh. There's no
chemicals. Like,
yeah. And the people here,
awesome.
At least in this part, they pride themselves on that. It's not just like, oh, well, there's no probiotics or whatever, antibiotics, because we choose to. It's just, we don't actually need it. I mean, apparently there's a whole thing about high altitude cattle, and they're just more healthy and stuff. I don't know, but it is delicious. I mean, it's just everything's great. So it's definitely a unique part of the country, unique climate. And it's, it's pretty rough. It's pretty unforgiving if you're not willing to just deal with it. Some people are like, I don't want to deal with it. And they, they go back to where they came from.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that connection too.
It's just learning new skills.
Where we come from is nature. It's not like this setup world that we have created.
Yeah.
Well, Evan, I think this has been amazing. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Great. Me too. My pleasure.
Your knowledge, and for making a space for us to learn a little bit more about what this is. And I hope I can be at some point off the grid.
Yeah. you know, there's tons of places. I was looking for places in, you know, Santa Fe for this job, and there were 2 off the grid, like off the grid on Craigslist, and they said on there, so off the grid, solar cistern, please don't complain, blah 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 blah, and it was like $500, and it's on 40 acres. I mean,
that's the point. Like you can't complain. You have to adapt to it.
yeah. I mean, you can complain, but just to yourself and just keep moving. I mean, I'm not gonna say that I did not complain. Like I was very frustrated a lot of times.
I will complain until I get used to it.
Right. You know.
Maybe in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll
I mean, it
stop
took me 3
complaining.
weeks. You know.
It would be amazing to, like, get off the grid and then record the first month.
You know, I thought about doing that, but the last thing you want to do when you're in a place like that is document stuff, because then you don't remember it. You're not remembering it in your head. You're not like viscerally processing what's happening to you. No. Well, I did try to keep like for experiences and stuff, and I was just like, there were days I was so tired by the end of the day from, you know, whatever I was ended up doing. I was just like, I don't want to do it. A what?
A voice recording thing. I have an app.
It's. I mean, the people who are doing that, you know, it's like they're doing it for the wrong reasons. I was like,
when am I going to read your book?
I'm working on it. But you know what? I should say it's 3 weeks.
I'm not going to be able to read your book.
There'll be something. You know, I was reading Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and I'm like, I could have wrote this. If I just sat down and wrote what happened to me in the last 2 years, yeah, it would have been like this thing. But I'm like, yeah, I'd rather have it in my brain and not, because I mean, it's like, oh, I gotta get the batteries for the camera, take a picture of this thing, and I gotta sit down and write it, or else I'm gonna forget because I got a really bad memory. And I'm like, I just wanted to I just want to enjoy this moment. I want to enjoy this hour. I want to enjoy this day. And then that day turned to a week, turned to a month, turned to a year. And then I was like, oh yeah, I didn't actually document any of this stuff. That's why I don't have any photos. I can like pull it off my SD card or whatever. But you know, you got to adapt. You can complain, but you have to still adapt. And it took me 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks or a massive event. And for me, they kind of lined up at the same time. I had to get a plumber out. He was in a 10,000-pound service truck, and he got stuck in the mud, and he made me help him get out. And I was out there for 6 hours in a snowstorm. I'd never been in a snowstorm that had lightning. It was intense. And I had the winch and chainsaw. We were chopping trees down and trying to make a thing to get him out. And it was like, you know, because he came down. I said, hey, you know, you can come down any other day. It happens to be a blizzard right now. You know, you can come next week. He's like, oh no, my truck can handle it. And then sure enough, I'm sitting on the porch and I see him walk up the driveway. And I'm like, I was like, you got stuck, didn't you? I was like, where'd you get stuck? He's like, oh, you know, here. And I'm like, man, that's the worst part to get stuck. You know that? It's like, well, did you bring chains or a chainsaw or anything? He's like, no. I was like, and so he goes, well, you know, I'm on the clock. So are you going to help me out? And I'm like, oh man. So I had to like figure it out. And it was like, I snapped. I was like, that's it. And then it was all calm after that. I was like, yeah, this is it. This is how it is.
It couldn't get any worse.
Right. And I was like, this is terrible, but this is also like the coolest thing ever. So I was covered head to toe in mud. I had like eye, you know, like a thing for my eyes.
Selfie, Evan.
Actually,
it's about the experience, Maria. It's not about the pictures.
There's a whole thing about, you know,
documenting.
our generation, the generation after, you know, people aren't building memories because they're just taking photos of everything. They don't need to build memories because it's on their phone, and people don't even remember where they've been, what they've done, who they've seen. Mm-hmm. And I took advantage of this opportunity because my phone just did not work. So I was like, wow.
Well, thank you.
All right. Yeah. I'll shut up.
Evan, it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for your time. Again, very eye-opening. The food always worries me because I eat a lot. But you make me feel a little bit more comfortable now.
Oh, you guys could totally handle it. Totally.
We will handle it when we have our farm. We're going to build our own farm.
We're not going to be off the grid.
We are going to be.
No.
You could do it.
We can do this.
Yeah. There needs to be like some commitment here.
Maybe next to El Paso, you can just drive 3 minutes and get some whatever you want.
Whatever you need. That's why I come to Durango.
All right.
All right, guys.
Okay. Bye, Evan. Thank you.